the presentation.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the technical difficulty. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for attending. We're going to wrap you up with this session today. I see the screen is already being shared, so thank you, Ellie, for that. My name is Rida Sabuni. I'm the Managing Director for Energetics in the MENA region. Energetics is a clean energy consultancy. We provide advice, strategy, program development for government and commercial sector clients across the United States and also in the MENA region. So I'm happy to be with you today and to tell you more about this energy efficiency in the MENA white paper, the status and outlook.
So hi everyone, my name is Elif and I joined the Clean Energy Business Council as a climate finance intern, and currently I'm a research associate and working on diverse subjects regarding energy efficiency, transition and climate finance. I'm based in France and working towards my graduate degree in finance, so I have a much more junior profile, but we've been working on this paper together with Rida and Maria. So yeah, it will be interesting to share our insights with you today. But before we go into the part regarding the white paper, I just would like to take the opportunity to briefly introduce you CEBC. Clean Energy Business Council is a non-profit membership organization aiming at promoting the uptake of renewable and clean technologies. And we do that mainly through establishing dialogues between the public and private sector and raising awareness using different tools such as our annual summit that you are attending this year. We represent the private sector involvement in the clean energy all across the MENA region, and we also develop and present policy solutions to support clean energy. We work on a variety of topics with our 5 different working groups covering subjects on climate finance, energy efficiency, e-mobility, women involvement in clean energy, and lastly, the recently established hydrogen and energy storage. And now Rida will give you some background information and the latest updates on the paper that will be published soon and help us really understand the need for a white paper on this subject.
Thank you, Elif. Okay, so basically we have released in January of 2018 a paper which was entitled Energy Efficiency in the GCC. So this is something that can be downloaded from the CEBC Energy Efficiency Working Group webpage. You could see the link on the screen, and hopefully someone can put it in the chat as well. But so that paper can be downloaded. In addition to that, there are resources that basically show the electricity tariffs across the GCC region. We've organized that into 2 separate web pages. The first one shows residential tariffs, and then the second one shows commercial, industrial, and government sector tariffs as well. And the white paper itself focused on buildings, industrial, and transportation sectors, and it provided basically the status of energy efficiency developments across the GCC, as well as recommendations for businesses and policymakers. So I think this paper was very well received. It provided this comprehensive look at energy efficiency and really what's been going on, what's been changing across the region. There have been, a variety of electricity tariff changes, fuel subsidy changes, as we'll talk about in the next few slides. And so this now has been over 3 years since it was released. And so if you could go to the next slide, we will now be releasing an updated version that will be next month in June. And this version will include some really important updates. So the first thing that we'll be doing is expanding the scope a little bit outside of the GCC now to cover Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, and developments in Lebanon as well. We'll be looking at the latest updates in regional energy price reforms, so electricity tariffs across all of these countries, and also the latest market developments, again, focusing on the sectors of buildings, ESCO industry, transportation, and industry. Some updated recommendations for policymakers, and as I mentioned, more in-depth electricity tariff pricing structures. So please do save the date. We are planning to launch this updated white paper June 15 at 4 p.m. Gulf Standard Time. And looks like, yes, we have put a link to register for this webinar, and we will be sending a formal announcement through CEBC in the coming few days. So, look forward to, providing even more details at this session. For now, really, this is the sneak peek into the updated white paper. So we'll go to the next slide. So the idea is there have been a number of, updates across the region in terms of energy prices and tariffs. And you could see them in the headlines that you have on the screen. So every day when we look at the news, we're seeing that there are changes taking place across the region, in terms of electricity and energy prices. And so what has been happening as a whole, if you could go to the next slide, Elif. So here's the macro look at what's been happening. So focusing just on 4 countries here, you could see some obvious trends here. So first of all, significant reductions in electricity subsidies, from 2010 to 2019, especially focused in the UAE and Qatar. So about a 90% reduction in those 2 countries. Also very significant, not quite as much, but in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, it's around a 61% reduction in electricity subsidies in that time period. But it has not been even across the region, right? So if you look at Kuwait, you'll notice it was, mostly flat between 2010 to 2019. And then in Egypt, actually, the subsidies increased in that time period. So some interesting, trends across the region, and it's something that we explore more fully within the white paper itself. So what are the actual tariffs across the region? Well, Elif will tell us a little bit more about that.
So here on the screen, we see some data that you will be able to find in the paper once it's published. And we have compiled this data by researching through various resources. In some countries, it was easier to find information than others. So this may be one of the things to potentially be beneficial to improve in the future. The figure on the left shows data points on the MENA residential sector electricity tariffs, and the figure on the right contains data on all other sectors except residential, such as government, industrial, commercial, etc. The figures actually give a more country level and general view, but we can still catch some interesting information on them. For instance, firstly, we see that across all the sectors, Jordan and Morocco's data points extend farther than other countries, with Jordan having the highest tariffs. These 2 countries also contain many data points, which indicate a much more complex electricity tariff structure than other countries. We can also observe that Kuwait has the lowest electricity tariffs when it comes to residential sector, but it's also generally low in the other sectors as well. We see that in figure 2, especially after Jordan and Morocco, Oman has numerous data points for non-residential sectors as well. And this is mainly due to the cost-reflective tariffs that the country applies to the largest industrial, government, and commercial customers since 2017. And lastly, across the UAE, we see that Abu Dhabi has the lowest rate of electricity tariffs. So if you could go to the next slide, thank you. So these 2 graphs just illustrate some of the points that were mentioned in the previous slide, but in a more detailed way. Here in front of us, we have 2 non-residential tariff structures from 2 places, the UAE, Northern Emirates, and Jordan. And categories show that Northern Emirates apply a more simple tariff structure across various sectors based on the slab rates. And on the other hand, Jordan illustrates really how complex the tariff structure can get. There's basically a different tariff applied for many different users. So you will be able to find this type of information on the other countries as well in the upcoming white paper. As we said, we're just trying to give you a sneak peek and give you a sense of the paper in general during this presentation. So besides the data that we present in electricity tariffs in the paper, another part is really given a sectoral point of view. So we are looking at different sectors to provide recommendations to policymakers and other stakeholders to really improve the energy efficiency landscape in the region. So the pie chart on the left shows the largest consumers of total final energy in the Middle East. And according to the IEA data, we see that industry, transport, and residential sectors aggregated all together consume 3/4 of the total final energy in the region. So these are the sectors that we naturally focused on the paper as well. Also, the largest consumers of the total final energy in the region are residential and industrial sectors, as you can see on the pie chart on the right-hand side. Now, Rida will go more into detail on the highlights on the previously mentioned sectors and give recommendations for different stakeholders.
Thank you, Elif. So if we want to focus first on the industrial sector, as Elif mentioned, it is the largest sector in terms of total final energy consumption, so 31%, and also 22% of electricity. Also globally, the industrial sector does consume more primary energy than any other sector. At the regional level, it also contributes 10% of GCC GDP as of 2015. So what has been happening in terms of industrial sector? So we just really have a couple of highlights here in this presentation. So in Saudi Arabia, as an example, they actually have energy efficiency targets in place that must be adhered to for certain energy intensive industries. So things like cement and steel, aluminum, and petrochemicals. So these current targets, are the average of 2018 benchmarks that need to be met by the year 2025. And that is something that is actually shown within the website of the Saudi Energy Efficiency Center, or SEEC. So that's taking place in Saudi Arabia for energy intensive sector. In the UAE, we see a large aluminum, cement, and petroleum refining industries. We also have targets in place for the industrial sector to reach 25% of GDP by 2025. We have things going on like Dubai aiming to become an international hub for knowledge-based innovation and sustainable industries. Another trend across the region is really the importance of energy management policies. So both the UAE and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia place a great emphasis on the development of industrial energy management policies, especially utilizing the framework of ISO 50001, which is the International Energy Management System standard. Each of these countries actually participate in what's called the Clean Energy Ministerial. It's an association of the largest economies across the globe, the energy ministries of these economies, and both the UAE and KSA are supporters of the Energy Management Working Group, which is effectively the ISO 50001 working group of the Clean Energy Ministerial. So that is for industrial sector. In terms of recommendations, that for policymakers in particular, we do recommend incentivizing industrial energy management programs, again, focusing on ISO 50001. This is something that has been popular across the world since the standard was released in 2011. So some regions across the world, for example, the European Union, have actually incentives in place, financial incentives for companies, organizations to either perform energy audits or to actually implement ISO 50001. In the GCC in particular, the UAE leads the way with more ISO 50001 certifications than any other countries. And you could even see an impressive stat, which is 2 organizations within the region in the UAE and in Oman have won the prestigious Clean Energy Ministerial Award for Excellence in Energy Management, which basically is given to the top organization across the world who has implemented an ISO 50001 project. In addition to energy management, other recommendations is really to provide incentives to industrial organizations to perform energy audits. So energy audits is the first stepping stone really to identifying energy savings. And there can be programs put in place to provide incentives for those types of energy audits. Also, developing an industrial energy management workforce is really critical. You need to have staff who are trained, and the industrial sector is actually quite special and unique. It involves more expertise than the building sector, for example. And so, one program that can be done or is being done in Saudi Arabia, for example, is through the KFUPM. So they have implemented a center of excellence for energy efficiency. That's the King Fahd University for Petroleum and Minerals. And that was done looking at the U.S. Department of Energy's model for industrial assessment centers, which basically provides energy audits to companies in the United States for the industrial sector specifically. If we could go to the next slide. So looking at transportation quickly, so a lot of things going on in transportation, I think, as we've heard over the last couple of days. It is a major consumer of energy across the region. We see a lot of structural changes with the shift away from internal combustion engines toward electric vehicles, of course. And just a few highlights. In Dubai, we have seen that they have announced great savings in the transportation sector. We also see in the Northern Emirates, for example, FIWA is starting to operate a number of different EV charging stations across the Northern Emirates. In Saudi Arabia, a particularly interesting development is with the mega projects going on there. So NEOM is one, but another one is also the Red Sea Development Company. They are basically developing an entire sustainable hotel and tourism destination in Saudi Arabia along the Red Sea, which will open its first hotel by what is planned to be the end of next year, and that will be completely sustainable, reliant on renewable and wind, solar and wind electricity, and utilizing plug-in electric vehicles throughout the resort and throughout the destination. So that's a pretty impressive show of support for electric vehicles from the kingdom. Also in Egypt, we see that they are starting to operate electric buses in Greater Cairo and Alexandria for a number of years now. Also starting to locally manufacture passenger electric vehicles and charging stations, and they have provided incentives for EVs. If we could go to the next slide. So we have a number of recommendations for the transportation sector. I won't go through each one in detail in the interest of time, but we will have more details when the white paper is released and at the launch event for the white paper. But basically, it involves, developing corporate fuel economy standards, planning for electric vehicle adoption, planning for connected and automated autonomous vehicles. Educating the public is going to be critical as we shift towards electric vehicles. And also for vehicle fleet owners is conducting energy fleet assessments and really just planning to green your fleet in terms of electric vehicles. We could go to the next slide. So if we focus on buildings now quickly before we wrap up. So for building owners, a number of things that building owners can do for our recommendations. So that includes defining goals, learning about different methods to achieve the savings and to achieve your goals, performing an energy audit or hiring an ESCO, and there's a number of accredited ESCOs and energy auditors across the region, and then monitoring and reporting on progress and achievements. I'll go to the next slide. And then finally, for policymakers as well, is providing incentive programs focusing on energy reporting, training and education programs as well are also critical. And again, we'll have more details in the white paper that will be released. So we'll go to the next slide in the interest of time. Then finally, just on ESCOs, we actually have a section also on ESCOs talking about the developments there, including the latest developments across the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, and other countries also across the region. So I think we'll wrap it up again just to keep us on time. So we'll go to the next slide and really just thank you for for being here for this presentation. We do have this webinar coming up on June 15. So if we could maybe put the link again for you to register for this event. We will have more details on each of these topics, and we will release the full white paper with the details then. So we look forward to having you, and thank you for joining us today.
And also I would like to thank all the summit sponsors, Green Parking, Standard Chartered, CETA, Penset Massons, Innova, Catholic Mobility, ESB International, Haga Group, Enoch, Emirates National Oil Company, Lockton, and Scami as well. So again, thanks all for joining, and please keep following our website and social media. We'll be posting about the webinar that's coming up. We have a few other webinars coming up as well, and the white paper and a few other publications which should be interesting for you as well. So please keep an eye, and thank you all for joining, and have an excellent and a great day. Thank you.